dive right in. So here we go. Talking about the middle school, again, the next step in our fifth graders experience at Emerson, we certainly like to think about our entire school experience as being young 5s to 8th grade. And really, it's exciting to think about that next step, not only into adolescence, if that isn't already starting to be something that you're feeling at home, but also into these 3 magical years of middle school. Where we like to talk very specifically about middle school at Emerson is really where it's a place where it's cool to be smart. And it's a place where kids can flourish and thrive and be excited about learning and do it in an environment that really allows them to try a lot of different things, some of which will be in line with their passions and interests, and others that might be something new to try and a risk to take. And we certainly want to encourage that during their middle school experience. I do like to get us started with really thinking about the end in mind, because again, as you're thinking about these 3 years, it is the capstone experience of an Emerson education. And really it's thinking about also the fact that after 8th grade, our students do go off into high school, believe it or not, and they are ready to take on those challenges. Some of the best feedback that we get is actually from high school teachers. Our high school teachers that have some of our students rave about the preparation, the confidence, the academic enthusiasm that our kids bring with them to whatever high school they go to. And we will often be welcoming back high schools to meet with our 8th grade students, and they will just be raving about the Emerson students that end up with them in high school. So again, we feel really confident about that. And we also know that our students are prepared. Some of the areas that we look at, and we survey our alumni every year to gather data on how well prepared they feel, not just in these specific content areas, but also across the board with respect to note-taking and independence and leadership. And you can see here that certainly our scores are extremely high, and the students feel incredibly well prepared for that next stage as they go off into high school, regardless of where they go. These are not just from one specific school. And as I mentioned, they certainly provide feedback on a number of different areas, from, again, organization, leadership, study skills. And so again, this is a data point for us to reflect on and say, you know what, we really feel like what we are doing is preparing them exceptionally well for high school. So not just the feedback that we get from our families, not just the feedback that we're getting from the teachers of those kids when they go off to high school, but also from the kids themselves. That confidence that they can build in themselves is something that's so important for them. So again, it is truly that next adventure. You'll excuse me for a second, because I'm sort of reflecting that we might have missed a couple slides. I just want to just jump back to something real quick and just share a couple of things that for some reason the slideshow jumped over. I also want to just reflect and share some of what the research says about that young 5th through 8th grade, or that K through 8th grade environment. There's a lot of research that points to the fact that kids will certainly do better when they are in a specific K through 8 environment, particularly in those middle school years. That feeling of being the top dogs at that school can really build their confidence, make them feel safer, make them feel more connected, and that they belong to that environment. And so again, we just feel really strongly in that capstone experience of that young 5th to 8th grade environment. And honestly, and really, this is their only chance. The students really have one chance to be that top dog, that 8th grade, within an environment like this, where they have the opportunity to be around lower school students while they are going through these 3 years of middle school. They can develop that independence and confidence to be themselves. They do that almost simply by the nature of the environment itself, or the structure of the school itself. They stay younger longer. Kids can oftentimes feel that they can become who they are. They can learn about their identities and really become who they are, and practice being a role model with that identity within this environment. And then that sense of pride about being the oldest at the school. There are very, very few opportunities for that. And this is the only one where we really feel like they would have the opportunity to do it during these 3 magical years, when we know that that's so important. And that's such an important part of their own identity. So again, I think it's important to reflect on that as you look at the structure itself at Emerson. So again, I thought I had missed a few things. Here's a few really great quotes from our alumni, and so parents of our alumni. I'm not going to read these for you, but again, certainly in general, over 90% of our students feel extremely well prepared compared to their non-Emerson peers for their high school experience. So again, I'll be sharing these slides later. You can look through these quotes at your leisure. And one of the questions I do always like to ask, and it's often funny, and I wish we were in person, because this can be a great question for us to have a little bit of conversation about. I would open it up if you're interested in sharing anything about what you remember from middle school. I like to joke, and I certainly would offer it up. So if there is anybody brave enough to share their middle school experience, certainly would invite you to do so. But again, I would ask you to think that it can be different. It can be a different way. Middle school can be a truly remarkable experience. It can be those 3 magical years that we certainly believe that they are. And so again, I would caution you to maybe connect your middle school experience. I know if I'm remembering back to mine at Forsyth Middle School, just down the road in Ann Arbor, this is a whole different ballgame. A whole different experience for kids. And so it's always funny to reflect on our own experiences, but then think about what it could be. And I'll certainly be sharing tonight about what we believe is best for kids in middle school. No takers? Okay. So one of the first things that I like to talk about or share about in our middle school is advisory. Advisory is really the closest thing that we get to a homeroom experience in the middle school. It's a small group of kids. We're talking around 10 kids in a co-ed environment where they have one advisor, one faculty member as their advisor. And that advisor really works to build a sort of a community within a community. It's a smaller touch point for kids at the school. It's an adult that they have there that's going to be an advocate for them, somebody that looks at them more through the lens almost as a parent than necessarily as a teacher. Now, certainly they're going to be aware of all of the things that are going on in, sorry, I'm just going to mute you, that are going on in the school, so they can serve as that academic safety net. If there are challenges that are coming up during the day, students can certainly be helping out as much as possible. And it's also a reminder for you that there is somebody that has eyes on your kid every day, and that sees them in that sort of parent mindset, and is checking in with them. How are they doing today? Let's see, is there something that's going on? They're reading their face, they're reading their body language. They're saying, you know what, something might be off today, and they're going to be somebody that would intervene or check in with them and support that social and emotional growth at school. There's a number of other things that we've done in the past through advisory, everything from service learning to collaborating with our lower school to serving as ambassadors for our student-led tours or in admissions events. And we also have an opportunity in advisory to have some study hall time, where kids can come together and the whole school is on study hall at once. So kids can come together and connect with one another when they have some time to get some work done. You can see in these pictures too that we do a whole lot of team building as well. This is really where we get to have that fun and build those communities and build community as a whole, because we can also bring grade levels together as a full group and do some really great team building as well. And finally, one of the other opportunities that we've continued to grow and evolve in our advisories is our diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum. Those are 20-minute lessons that we embed throughout the year into 8 different themes. And those themes will continue throughout the year, where students will work with their advisory. They'll work with other advisories together on a number of different DEI-focused curriculum, everything from thinking about culture and community to thinking about identity, thinking about sort of power and privilege, and all of those important concepts that we want to weave into our advisory curriculum. And so those become safe places where kids can really ask those questions and have those conversations within that group. A quick note on technology at the school. So we have a number of different opportunities for technology, the least of which being that the students will be bringing a device with them each day. We do have an acceptable use policy. It's the same as the lower school. Certainly the expectation of utilizing those devices to enhance student learning is certainly our goal. We are a Google Apps for Education school, so all of our work gets funneled through Google Classroom and Google Calendar and Drive and email. And again, we really want to try to teach that individual responsibility for having access to the technology. Now, one of the things we know can be a distraction for kids is cell phones. We also know that many students that as they come into middle school bring those with them. We do ask that they turn them off and keep them in their locker for the duration of the day so that we can prioritize that face-to-face interaction. The minute that they walk in the door, we want to make sure that they're connecting with their peers and not sitting in front of a screen staring at their phone. And certainly as faculty and staff at the school, we seek to model that as much as possible by having those face-to-face interactions with kids and modeling that, you know, we shouldn't be sitting there staring at our phones when we have the opportunity to engage with one another. There may be rare occasions when we've used phones to take pictures or for our yearbook or for making movies for particular classes, for example. But again, on the for the vast majority, we are asking those are off and away for the duration of the day. There are also a number of other opportunities related to technology at the school. We have a number of fantastic tech-based electives, and I'll talk more about electives later on today, where students can get involved in electronics and engineering, 3D printing, computer programming, robotics. And so those are a number of different opportunities that kids can get into throughout their middle school experience. And we're continuing to think about ways that we can build that STEAM-focused or STEM-based programs into our middle school program even more. And certainly you'd see that in sixth grade as our Quest program continues into sixth grade. Oh, and we use RenWeb too. So let's talk about math in the middle school. So math really begins as we look at sixth grade, and we have some traditional pathways that we use. Now, these aren't the only ones that we offer. Again, these are typical pathways that students would follow. And so if a student begins in foundations in sixth grade, they would move into pre-algebra in seventh grade, and they would take algebra in eighth grade, and typically they would move into geometry as a ninth grader. Students have the opportunity to start in pre-algebra in sixth grade. If they do that, they move into algebra at seventh grade, and they take geometry at eighth grade, moving into algebra 2 when they matriculate into high school. Now, again, these are the typical pathways, but at the same on the same token, we offer all of these math classes, and we will certainly work within the middle school schedule to make sure that kids are appropriately placed. We had sixth graders taking algebra last year. We have kids that are taking other types of classes. For example, we have a group of seventh graders taking algebra 2 right now. So we work within the developmental readiness of our students, and we provide those math classes so that we can reach their, we can meet their developmental needs and their academic readiness, regardless of what grade level they are in. And I think that's something that's certainly unique in middle schools around the area. Some are fairly rigid as far as what types of math programs and math options they have. We feel like we want to meet the kids where they are, and if they can demonstrate that they're prepared for those next steps, we will support them in that journey. There are a number of other math opportunities for students at the school. Those are anything from our Math Madness elective, a sort of a higher level math-based class elective, to Math Counts, which is an after-school math competition series. We're currently in the process of identifying a coach for our team this year. So if there's anybody out there that's interested in coaching our Math Counts team, let me know. I would love to talk to you. That's typically, again, an after-school program that runs, and then there's a competition typically in March in which we would be competing against a number of different schools in the area. As I mentioned before, Algebra 2 certainly is something that's offered for us in the middle school, and it's something that's unique amongst middle schools as far as I'm aware. And we certainly want to try to encourage kids that are ready for those higher level math classes, and we would support them along that way. We've also had students that have wanted to go even further, and in some cases we would work with virtual options to support them along the way. Actually, this was on us. This slide existed pre-pandemic, so we were doing this pre-COVID and supporting students in a remote environment. So we've been doing this for a while, and so we have the utmost confidence in being able to support kids in their journey through math at whatever level they're going to be ready for. So I'm going to jump into science for a second. This again, This is going to tweak a little bit. One of the changes that we are looking at adjusting is that next year's 7th grade science is going to be the life sciences. Currently, sixth graders are actually focused on earth science, so we have a doubling up this year. But in a typical year, we would be following a progression similar to this. We are going to be flipping 6th and 7th grade moving forward, because we feel like that better aligns with actually the high school experience as they matriculate off into that next step. But in general, our 6th grade, as I mentioned, continues with the Quest program. So they still have the 3 days of science-based class, followed by 2 days of the tech-based class. And those are led by Jamie Phelps and Beth Nazario. Again, fantastic opportunities to still be involved in that hands-on STEM-based focus, with still a heavy dose of sort of the scientific learning, the scientific method that we know is so important for kids as they move out into high school. And certainly as students move into 8th grade, that 8th grade physical science and chemistry class does begin to feel more high school-like. And so we're certainly challenging the kids to think more deeply, get more scientific, I would say, with the work that they are producing. And again, are getting very well prepared for that next step into high school. Yeah. We do follow a very project-based and hands-on model for our science programs. I think that is certainly one of the strengths of the program as a whole. Our students get dirty. They're outside. They're building things. They are out in our permaculture garden, and again, doing all kinds of things both on the campus and elsewhere. We take our students out to Flat Rock, Michigan, at the culmination of the salmon project, where they are raising salmon from baby eggs up until par, which is about a 3-inch size little fish. We release them in the lower Huron River in the hope that they make it off to Lake Erie and get to be big salmon, and then eventually come back to the same place that they were later on. We have yet to return at the time when they should be back to spawn upriver to see if we can find any of our salmon from before. But I'm confident we will get there. So again, one of the other pieces in our science program is that the writing that students are expected to do, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on between our language arts program and our science programs. And so the expectations in writing certainly extends between both of those areas. So the opportunities for students to practice that type of sort of more analytical scientific writing exists with the support and backing of the language arts instruction in the language arts program. Again, we want to kind of create that context for kids to really understand and practice those skills in a number of different areas, because ultimately they do translate from class to class and subject area to subject area. Finally, again, lots of other science opportunities in the middle school. Science Olympiad continues. We've got a very strong Science Olympiad program. We've had all kinds of electives, from rocketry to foodology, learning all about food. That oftentimes tends to be one of the more popular electives that we have. Pretty much anything with food you'd find to be a really popular elective for middle schoolers. Our permaculture garden and spending time out there, as well as in our nature center, and thinking about all of the different ethics and principles involved in those practices. Those exist in our electives, as well as in many of our science programs throughout all 3 grade levels. I mentioned language arts and in the talking about science. These are just a few of the books that we read throughout the middle school experience, from 6th to 7th to 8th grade. So you can again see some of them. One of the important things that I think, or one of the great parts in our language arts program exists between our 6th and 7th graders. We have a or a mixed grade level book club, and we were even doing those remotely. As students were grouped by reading level and were given a book that was at the upper reaches of their reading level, and they were together with a group really determining sort of a student-led book club. So they were figuring out how many pages to read. They were talking about the questions that they were going to be asking. And there was some accountability there where students were really having to think deeply about how they were going to structure that for their peers. A really great collaborative experience for kids in 6th and 7th grade. Excuse me. Just a few more specifics related to the sixth grade language arts program. Now, I will talk about this later, but language arts and social studies are a interdisciplinary class in 6th and 7th grade. There are more explicit language arts components, which is what I'll talk about here. But for all intents and purposes, those classes are an interdisciplinary experience in which the books and concepts that they're learning about in the literature often will be reflective in the content that they're studying for social studies, and the expectations for written communication and communication in general exist as embedded in the language arts, but then also certainly connect to the social studies. So the writing in 6th grade is scaffolded to, again, include all of the different areas of writing, from literary analysis, stories, poetry, persuasive response. And ultimately, the goal is for them to be leaving 6th grade with a solid understanding of how to construct an essay and to be persuasive in their writing. And that goes everything from making sure that they're including research-backed information, whether including also quotes from books that they're reading to reinforce the thesis that they're trying to prove. And again, all of those become components, introductory components in 6th grade. We do have a vocabulary program that extends from 6th to 7th to 8th grade. They typically work at a 1 grade level above for all of their different programs. And so you'd see that across the board. And then there's a formalized program to support students' development of their grammar, and really becoming more, the emphasis becomes more and more on using that in their own writing. By 8th grade, you'll see that certainly that extends, it moves away from the formal program and into the explicit expectation of having it in their work. Now for 7th grade, again, you'll see that the writing has continued to focus on many of those same themes, but you'll notice that it has included the 5-paragraph essay. 7th grade becomes that year that we really want to build those essay writing skills. And again, they've built off that introductory understanding in 6th grade to now it being more solidified in 7th grade. And that expectation of really making sure that those 5 paragraphs are well constructed, the argument is well thought out, and they're certainly ready to then take that to the next step, which you'll see in 8th grade, to write more objective essays. And it isn't necessarily just a 5-paragraph essay. They are working to develop an argument and to prove that point through whatever number of words they need, obviously with some level of expectation. You'll see that the vocab program continues from 6th to 7th and 8th grade, and certainly grammar moves from a more formalized program into something that's more expected within their own writing. And certainly that puts the emphasis on our faculty to make sure that they are providing really thoughtful feedback on their writing as a whole. And I think that is something that is truly exceptional at the school. We've got fantastic language arts and social studies teachers. I mean, we have fantastic teachers across the board, but particularly in those areas, they spend hours providing very thoughtful feedback on students' written response, such that they can go through that writing process and make changes along the way to just become a better writer overall. Other opportunities that kids will have in language arts in general, again, electives, including journalism. We've had an e-news team in the past, creative writing, book clubs, and the book club that I talked about, in addition to other book clubs. We even have fun classes like Dragonology, where they're reading stories about dragons, they're writing stories about dragons. It's a whole immersive experience. It's a lot of fun. And certainly our yearbook, you know, sometimes students don't really necessarily recognize that there's a great deal of language arts type needs that come through the yearbook experience. And so a lot of students have a lot of joy in creating that memorable book for us each year, along with the support of Michelle Borton and Jason as well. So shout out to Jason. We've also included a number of summer reading books for students so that over the summer they can find fun and thought-provoking literature to read throughout their time. We haven't necessarily made that a explicit expectation, but we certainly find that kids have gotten excited about checking in with those books. And we've even had some in the past, some summer reading clubs that have grouped up and come together to talk about different books that they're reading. And those are a lot of fun. A few years ago, I led one on using books that embedded the diversity, equity, inclusion themes. And we really dove into looking at those, a whole collection of sort of anti-racist text literature that was middle school appropriate, obviously. All right, now social studies. And so I'll give you 3 different areas, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Typically, 6th grade begins with a heavy focus on geography, moving into ancient civilizations, a real strong emphasis in looking into all of the 5 major world religions. That's a great opportunity for kids to learn about some religions that they may not have learned about at a deeper level before. And then we move into American colonization and early colonial America, moving us towards a place where we can jump into 20th century history, which tends to be the 7th grade focus. Within 6th grade, though, the students are learning, certainly learning about how to be thoughtful researchers, learning about reading comprehension. Again, that's a heavy emphasis in 6th grade, learning how to take the information that you're gathering, make sense of it, process it, and then make sure that it's included in any responses that you're needing to give. And then finally, organization or organization of mind. That tends to be something that spans across 6th grade. We recognize that as students are coming into 6th grade, they need that emphasis on organization. And so across the board in all of their classes, there's a heavy emphasis on using a planner. There's a heavy emphasis on managing your time. And those are also things that exist and become more explicitly taught in our health curriculum, which takes place in the 2nd trimester. Even though that's after, during the 1st trimester, teachers are really making sure that those things are happening in the classroom. But after, even into the 2nd trimester, there's still explicit instruction that happens during health. Let's see, moving into 7th grade. Again, as I mentioned, 20th century world history. We move from industrialization with, again, a look at immigration into the United States during this time. We talk about the push and pull factors for why folks might be immigrating or emigrating from their countries or immigrating into the United States. We dive into 20th century conflict, all kinds of different conflicts in the world wars, Cold Wars, even economic conflict around the Great Depression, civil conflict related to the civil rights movement. And then that moves us into thinking about the way in which the world is operating today. And again, thinking about history using history as a lens to help understand the things that are happening in the world nowadays is a really important emphasis in 7th grade. And really the projects, the simulations, the experiences for kids to actually live the history, it happens certainly across all of the grade levels, but 7th grade tends to be the one where there's a heavy emphasis on that. Students feel like they're ready to really immerse themselves in those worlds in the 7th grade. And really the ultimate goal of being a historian, how you use primary and secondary sources to gather information about events that have happened in the past. And how do you communicate that to people, whether they be teachers or other students or family members, based on your understanding of what's happened. Now, you might find this interesting that we go then way back in time in 8th grade. So we jump way back in time to Roman history. We focus on medieval Europe, British history, African history, certainly within this bucket of high school preparation. We believe across the board in all of these classes, all of our social studies classes in particular, that it doesn't necessarily have to be chronological. If teachers are bringing in these passionate areas of study and really making sure that they are, again, encouraging and challenging kids to think and be like a historian, the content sometimes is secondary. So many of these concepts are going to be things that kids will be able to see again and experience again when they get to high school. That if we can create that joy for learning and that joy for being a historian through the content that we're able to provide, and teachers can really demonstrate that passion in the classroom. Again, that's just a win-win for the students and for the teachers. So students in 8th grade, certainly they're working on presentation skills, communication skills, oral speaking skills as they are preparing for that high school transition. That's really one of the areas that really tends to build student confidence. The objective essay writing is a huge component of that. I'll tell you a quick story. We had a student that graduated from Emerson a few years ago and went off to Pioneer High School. And this was a young lady who shared when she was in 8th grade that I'm sure many of you are familiar with Harry Potter, but she shared the experience of feeling very much like Ron Weasley, kind of awkward, not really sure, not very confident, not really understanding about what she needed to do, and just sort of like making it through and working hard and whatnot, but still just kind of awkward, not very confident. And then she went off to high school, and again through that preparation that she had through high school, reflected that she now felt like Hermione Granger. She now felt like she had this confidence that she could raise her hand and answer questions. She knew what she was supposed to do, and she was ready to tackle those challenges in the class. We got a question in the chat here. I said, do teachers and kids discuss current events? Most certainly. That is definitely something that students and teachers will do in the class. Obviously some current events tend to be more sensitive or sparkier than others. And certainly we rely on our teachers to use their judgment and thoughtfulness when presenting different current events that are coming up in the news. And if there's ways to connect that with different periods in history that they're studying, certainly teachers will do that. But again, there are things that we certainly can dive into, and other areas that we feel like that might be more of an area that parents would want to talk and families would want to talk about. So there is a bit of a balance, obviously, but certainly the teachers do not shy away from including current events in their topics and in their conversations. So that in-depth research that's required for those objective essays, as I was mentioning in 8th grade, is a key component of that. Our students are encouraged to go to the grad library at U of M and to find and check books out there that are going to be useful in some of their objective essays that they're writing. Victoria, our 8th grade social studies teacher, will bend over backwards to provide avenues for kids to gather that information and do so in a way that is, again, challenging them to practice those skills of how do you find and collect that information. And again, all of our teachers, again, on the other end, spend countless hours on really reviewing and reflecting on some of the student writing that students will do, and making sure that they have that feedback to then make their writing even better as they move forward. I will say that one of the areas that's a huge strength for students as they leave here is their writing when they leave Emerson. And again, our students come back and share that. Our parents come back and share that. They feel like if they've accomplished what they accomplished in 8th grade, they will do exceptionally well when they go off into high school. I'm sure Michelle, I can't see everybody, but I'm sure Michelle would be nodding her head too. So world languages in the middle school. We offer 4 different world languages. Students choose one when they come into 6th grade. Latin, French, Spanish, and Chinese. It's offered 5 days a week. It's a core component of our curriculum. And really by 8th grade, the 3rd level of that language, those classes are very much immersive experiences. Now, we aren't a immersion school, but those 3rd level classes, those level 3 classes, certainly are ones in which the expectations that students are speaking, writing, thinking, reading, everything, communicating in the target language, and all of the instruction is delivered in that language. And so it's again a truly phenomenal preparation for that, and the students have a wonderful time. It's not just rote drill practice. Certainly there's a component of that when students are learning vocabulary and whatnot, but really it's about having fun, learning the culture of the language, and then really practicing it and becoming embedded in it, and becoming as fluent as possible. So as they go off into high school, they often will test out of or qualify for 2nd or 3rd year high school equivalencies. Some cases that might even mean that they test out of their world language requirements when they get to high school, which can open up their schedule for other opportunities in high school as well. So world languages, again, is an outstanding opportunity for kids. If you happen to be around next week, I believe, we're doing our Latin naming ceremony. You'll see Victoria decked out in her Roman gear, giving out new Latin names to all of our students that are new to that. So if you have a student in Latin next year, you'll be able to come and join us for that Latin naming ceremony. It's a great time. So in the middle school, we also have enrichment rotations. One of the things I hope that you'll see as we go through all of this is just the wide variety of classes that our kids have the opportunity to take. Again, with emphasis on the whole child, we really try to give kids the opportunity to practice and to explore all of these different areas of life, really. And one of the ways that we do that is through our enrichment rotation. Students have 4 different enrichment rotation classes. Theater arts, creative arts, and health are all classes that happen twice a week for 1 trimester. And then PE happens 3 times a week for the whole year. And so again, that's how the schedule gets built. Theater arts enrichment is for one of the trimesters in their year. And really, I think the important thing to understand about theater arts, or our drama enrichment class, is that it's not all about being on stage. This is really a chance for students to learn about themselves, to hopefully better understand themselves, often through the lens of a character. And if they can practice that confidence on stage through the lens of a character, or even just in the circles that they use in that class, that's confidence that they can take with them when they're giving a presentation, or whether they're applying for a job, or whether they're, again, standing up in front of a group of people doing some sort of presentation. So that presence is something that we really want to try to encourage in our kids. And should they choose to continue to dive into the theater arts in a much deeper way, you can see here that we do a number of major productions, and we are excited to be returning to them this year. So this fall, we'll be doing a play. Everything I learned, I'm trying to remember that. Everything I learned from a zombie, I think, is the title of the play this year, which the kids are just having a blast with. In the winter this year, we're going to be doing a musical, and we're not still entirely sure how that's going to work. We're trying to figure out exactly what the limitations are going to be as far as kids singing inside, but we are still working on that and excited to be able to return to having a musical at Emerson. And again, if kids are excited about being on stage and doing those kinds of things, these are opportunities for them to immerse themselves in that world. You can see here an example when we did The Little Mermaid Junior, which was a wonderful show for us. A few other examples of things if kids want to be on stage. We've done a show choir in the past, and we've done even smaller types of productions. Set for Change was social and emotional theater for change. So students taking important issues to them and creating productions that would be something that they would want to teach to others, and they do that through the lens of theater. A few other examples of some of the plays that we've done here in the past. Wonderful, wonderful productions. And we're so fortunate to be able to utilize the AIC now and have them be done on campus. As I mentioned, art, or the creative arts, is another example of one of the enrichment classes. This is a great opportunity for kids to who love to draw, paint, create, use clay, do tile work, all kinds of different things that they can immerse themselves in those projects. And obviously focusing on the elements and principles of art. We also, I know that our Miss Trimner, our art teacher, also loves to find opportunities for kids to immerse themselves in our community and do things to support our community. They've done things like painting signs for our permaculture garden. They're even talking about installing murals at the school, more murals at the school, and doing a lot of different opportunities in that way. I'm just seeing a question pop up in the chat. How are the fifth graders exposed to all the great things middle school has to offer? Do they have a daytime when they spend time with a middle schooler? That is a great question, Jen. Thank you for asking that. Let me just wrap up art, and then I'll answer your question. A couple of other opportunities that I just wanted to point out. We do have a ceramic studio in the art room, and students do have an opportunity to get on those wheels and give those a try. And then we can even, if kids aren't interested in being on stage for the musical, we have kids that can be involved in set design, whether that be with costuming or even with different sets and set pieces and things like that. Again, we want to try to find opportunities for them to be involved at a level that they're comfortable with. Some kids would choose to not be on stage, and that's certainly fine as well. So that can happen too. All right, let me answer Jen's question about how can fifth graders get the opportunity to experience these things. One of the things that we've done in the past is an event called Up to the Future. I would say, I don't know how many years ago, it has changed recently, but 4 years ago, what used to happen is all of the fifth grade used to essentially replace the sixth grade. The sixth graders would go off on a field trip. The fifth graders would all become sixth graders, and they would spend the morning going through the morning classes in sixth grade. And that was a great experience for them to meet teachers and get a sense for at least what those classes might feel like. But one of the things that we realized is that it actually may be even better if we gave them the opportunity to basically be a sixth grader for a day and get to experience all of these great opportunities for a whole day. And so 2 years ago, pre-COVID, what we did is we actually partnered up all of a fifth grade homeroom with different sixth graders. And they were their buddies for the day. They shadowed them for the day. They got to go through their schedule. They got to sit in classes. They got to do everything that the sixth graders got to do for that entire day. And it really gave them a great opportunity to sort of see what it was like. Right now, we are planning on trying to do something like that. We think that we could do it in smaller groups. So we might do something where we're taking half of a homeroom, for example, and letting them shadow with different middle school or sixth graders for a day in the middle school. We might have to shrink that number even more, just depending upon spacing in the room. But we certainly want to do it safely. But we are definitely planning on giving our fifth graders the opportunity to be in the middle school for a day, so that they can get that experience and really experience everything that the middle school has to offer for that Up to the Future experience. So great question. Thanks for asking. I had a couple more pictures. Okay. PE, as I mentioned, is a 3-day-a-week class all year, every year. They do all kinds of different team sports, skill development, personal fitness, and then we even have a day of the week that we call intramurals. Intramurals tends to be the day where students have the opportunity to do some fun competitions with one another. A lot of times it's based on the skills that they've been learning throughout that course or throughout that section. So a great opportunity for kids to stay active. And again, we really, really want to encourage that personal fitness as much as possible. Oh, okay, Leslie. Sorry. Thanks for joining us for a little bit. Sorry, Leslie has to head out. Her email is in the chat if anybody's interested in learning more about the instrumental program. I'll talk a little bit about it as best I can, Leslie, but it certainly is not nearly the amount of information that you'd be able to provide. So again, also related to PE, we have athletic programs that students can be involved in. Obviously, I know many fifth graders are involved in some of the programs right now, like cross country. But we also offer a co-ed soccer team that's open to 6th through 8th graders. We have a girls volleyball team. I think we have some 5th graders that might be involved in girls volleyball. How do co-ed sports work out for middle school girls? I would say co-ed sports have historically worked out really well. They seem to have, there doesn't seem to be necessarily any issues related to playing time or competition or anything else. We are a no-cut school, so any students that want to participate in an activity at the school can do so. There's no tryouts. Again, if you're interested in being a part of it and you're willing to commit to the time, we would love to have students be a part of that team. So I hope that answers your question, Sandra. In the winter, we offer boys and girls basketball. And in the spring, we offer co-ed track and field. And typically, again, we would be competing against a number of other independent schools in the area. A lot of times they're the collection of parochial schools, but also Steiner is another school that we connect with and compete against. So yes, thank you, Lisa. We do play other co-ed teams within our league as well. And then finally, the other rotation that is a 2-day-a-week class is health, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Our 6th grade health class is really focused on the introduction to middle school. Now, even though they take it in the second trimester, it really becomes a time after they've sort of settled into those first 12 weeks of middle school, a time to then sort of dive into those concepts that tend to be ones that we really want to continue to support them through, which includes time management and organization. Those are huge and a huge emphasis in 6th grade, but then also friendships and the changing nature of friendships that can happen in middle school, overall wellness, and then certainly just continuing to build community. You can see an example of a team building activity that we did with kids here. And so it is a lot of fun. And overall wellness as a theme throughout all of them certainly continues to extend. And certainly begins in that 6th grade group. 7th grade, again, personal wellness. We really want to dive into the things related to sleep and nutrition, mental health, disease prevention. Those are concepts that 7th graders tend to connect more with, and also are important topics for them to be thoughtful about as they are moving into those important years and heightened years of adolescent and adolescent neurodevelopment as well. So we know how important sleep and nutrition can be on the development of a child's brain. And we talk about that, and we want to be as thoughtful as possible with kids and give them as much information as possible to make thoughtful decisions as they develop and grow up, which by 8th grade, we start to dive into some of the more adult decisions that they may be faced with when they head off into high school. Again, the alcohol, tobacco, mental health, sexual activity, drugs, and what are the conflicts that they may come into conflict with or aware of when they move into high school. If we can arm them with enough education and enough information to make thoughtful and wise choices, we certainly would do that. Our health teacher, Abby Lawrence Jacobson, is a phenomenal resource for our students. She is also our middle school counselor. And so she not only supports the students through the health program, but she also serves as a resource for them if and when they have any questions or if and when they need any support in the social and emotional world. She's phenomenal. Can't speak highly enough of the work that she does at the school. Now, that has taken us through essentially the first 7 periods of our day. Our classes are broken out into, we've got 1 block class per day, which is our language and social studies block. We have our math classes and we have our science classes. We have a world language class and an enrichment rotation class. And of course, kids have to eat lunch in there, so we build in a lunch time. After that, though, we have 2 other periods of time that happen in the afternoon. And one of those tends to be, or is our advisory period. And so that's a time when students will get together and they will connect with their advisor, as I mentioned before. And then the other period at the end of the day rotates between our electives and our performance and presentation block classes. Those are new for us this year. We made a bit of a change moving into this year so that we could create a year-long course that provided students with an opportunity to immerse themselves in various arts and courses that tended to be, we came up with this title because we felt like these classes tended to connect with performing or presenting in some way, shape, or form. Those classes include band, orchestra, speech and debate, creative visual arts, and then theater production. And they are wonderful year-long opportunities for kids to, again, really immerse themselves in those programs. Our band and orchestra programs are phenomenal. And again, if you have questions about the instrumental program, certainly reach out to Leslie. Our band director, Michelle Borton. Again, many of you you've all had experience, or many of you have had experience with either of them through the music options in 5th grade. But they really continue that exceptional work into the middle school. They create a family with their programs. They do all kinds of really great community building activities. They're planning a trip here in the fall to Frankenmuth, where they're going to be going off to do a leadership retreat to really inspire the kids to get closer and more connected with small ensembles in some of the upcoming productions that they're planning to do. So again, there's a wonderful array of opportunities for kids that are interested in band and orchestra to continue that into the middle school. Many of those musicians then continue on into high school and do extremely well, whether it's in the marching band, the orchestra, or even in the larger band as part of the high school program. And certainly that success is due solely to the incredible leadership of Michelle and Leslie, along with the support with Eddie and Matt McCoy too, in his work with 5th graders as well. Speech and debate is another class that we've offered. This is a blend. You know, we certainly want to blend the different opportunities with more formal debate, forensics, and then even Model UN and some of those experiences that kids can do. And really, Beth Nazario and Carol Kelly, 2 very experienced debate teachers, lead the group through learning those practices and learning those skills in the speech and debate class. Creative visual arts is very much like it sounds. It's an opportunity for kids to immerse themselves in those arts. Those classes extend over for 3 trimesters and are bucketed into 3 different areas. The first of which focuses on public art. And that's where kids are learning the elements of how to create a mural and thinking about places in the school and designs that they may want to install as mural projects. And we're excited to see what they come up with. The second trimester focuses on wire design, and they'll be partnering and working with the Festifools production, the Full Moon production in downtown Ann Arbor to create some lumineers for that parade. And they always come up with wonderful designs for those that parade through the school. And finally, for the 3rd trimester, they're planning on doing a stop motion animation unit. And that's going to be a really exciting blend between visual arts and technology and how they can go about creating those really I'm so excited to see what they come up with. And then finally, theater production. This class is, you know, I've already shared a little bit about the theater arts, but this class really gives kids the opportunity to learn everything else about a theater beyond the actual acting. So this is where students learn about how to, you know, playwriting, script writing, blocking of a play or a musical. They talk about light design and costume design and set design and all of the you know, all of those other elements that I think students really they don't get in the theater arts enrichment class, but they also don't necessarily get in the musical or the play. And many kids would choose to focus on that area as opposed to being on stage. And so this is a great opportunity for them to learn a little bit more about those aspects related to theater production. And then finally, electives. Electives are the class that meets when the performance and presentation block classes aren't meeting. And these are really, really special. I think the combination between the performance and presentation and the elective classes are something that sets us apart as far as the programming that students can get through middle school at Emerson. These are 12-week courses that are designed to give students opportunities to really dive into a wide variety of interests, everything from, well, if you drive by and you see the permaculture garden, that was designed by students as part of an elective. That was not just Matt Nolan going out there and planting a bunch of trees and shrubs and putting up a pergola. That was designed intentionally by kids. They took consideration for wind and sun and rain and water drainage and things like that, and designed that whole garden and thought about what plants and species to plant there, and certainly we're involved in making sure that we got chickens out there and all kinds of things. So that was student led, and that's the emphasis behind these electives. We want our students actively involved in developing these learning opportunities. We want their input. We want them to share in the passions with our teachers and to really get excited about these non-graded project-based courses. And it's also really fun to have us culminate our days in these experiences. I think that having kids end their day with something that they've chosen to be a part of, can really be a huge motivation for them as they think about their experience in middle school. We oftentimes will have our 8th graders be the leaders of those classes, and it's a really great opportunity for them to take on that role within these classes. Now, I will say that occasionally kids tend to gravitate towards those classes that they might really, really want to take. And we oftentimes will see kids staying in that same lane throughout their maybe year or two in the middle school. And that's another role for our advisors to step in and say, why don't we try something new? There's a whole bunch of other electives out there. Let's try to step out of your comfort zone maybe a little bit and try something that you haven't done before. Maybe you've taken all the art classes that we have to offer. So let's maybe give it a try and go try something else. Maybe try our science Olympiad, or maybe you want to try working in the permaculture garden, or maybe you want to try again, anything from, we've had a learning about superheroes through the lens of how do superheroes get created, and literature around that, as well as the current media and movies and things like that around superheroes. And who are the superheroes and who aren't superheroes, and all of those kinds of questions. But again, lots of different opportunities that come up in electives. I'm seeing a question here. What's the average class size in middle school, and are any of the classes mixed grades? Again, great question. Average class size, again, it certainly depends on the size of the group, but we certainly have kids anywhere, classes, and the language arts, social studies, math, and science classes tend to be around the 16 to 18 ballpark. Advisory, certainly smaller, more around the 10 or 11. World languages are a little dependent upon what kids take. Excuse me. So they can range anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15. We certainly cap our classes at 20. We would never go larger than that. And then the mixed grade classes, those are our performance and presentation block classes and our electives. Those are all mixed grade. And we really want to try to encourage that as much as possible. And again, that's where opportunities for our 8th graders to take on those leadership roles in those classes, and for kids to meet people outside of their grade level. It's great for them to walk through the hallways and be able to share in a conversation with an 8th grader, as a 6th grader with an 8th grader, on an elective that they're in, or a project that they're working on, or even those book clubs that I was talking about with 6th and 7th grade. So certainly we do try to encourage that as much as possible. It's been, one of the things that we're sort of trying to weave back in, certainly not post-COVID, but in this COVID world. How are kids graded in the middle school? Do they get letter grades? Again, a great question. We do move more towards a traditional grading scale in the middle school. Our teachers utilize RenWeb as a portal for families to access grades should they choose to. We like to really talk to kids, though, about the value of grades and really try to help them understand that those tend to be checkpoints for them along the way. It is not an indication of whether or not we like them. It's not an indication of how necessarily how much they know, but it is an indication of them meeting the expectations of the class. And again, there are opportunities for everybody to learn all the time. So they are not static. They are not, our teachers are also really open and aware of knowing that kids all learn at different paces. And so if a student, for example, is struggling with a concept and there's a test that they have to take, or there's work that they have to produce, if it takes them a little longer, or they need multiple tries to redo something, or to make sure that they understand it, they will do so, and not necessarily be penalized for it. And so again, we really want to try to bridge that gap between lower school and high school in a way that helps them understand the value of grades, and also helps them, what we hope to be, have a healthy relationship with grades, meaning that they don't take them as sort of the end all be all, and that their self-worth gets tied into those grades. We want to try to help them be aware of how they could use those as tools to better their learning. Dave says, is it one elective every trimester? Yes, great question. So those electives will change every trimester. So there will be a whole new crop of electives for second trimester, and again, a whole new crop of electives for third trimester. There tend to be some consistent themes. We'll always have a science-based elective. We'll always have a tech-based elective. We'll always have some sort of social science-related elective. And so again, there's some art-based electives again. So we'll have some consistent themes, but the classes themselves don't necessarily repeat every trimester. There's a whole new group that starts in the second trimester, and a whole new group that starts in the third trimester. If you're ever interested in learning about it, I'd be happy to show you. And sorry, I have a note that says my internet is unstable, so if I'm choppy, I very much apologize. Let's see, a couple more questions. Again, I mentioned food. Food can be a very popular elective for us. This is food around the world. I think kids were learning about how to make different types of sushi rolls. And so again, a lot of different opportunities for kids to immerse themselves in food. Obviously, this was a picture from pre-COVID times. And then I also wanted to mention support and enrichment in the middle school. So again, that's a component that exists in our lower school, and certainly extends into the middle school. The student support angle, the continued support that we offer in the middle school, continues to be coordinated by our support and enrichment program director in collaboration with families. We really follow two different models. We follow the push-in model and the pull-out model. The pull-out model could mean that students work more one-on-one with in a one-on-one setting with a teacher, or one of our learning support teachers. This could happen during study hall. It could happen during advisory. We tend to not want to pull them out during advisory, and it could also happen during an independent study time should we decide to do that. And again, those are conversations that we have with families to decide what would work best. The push-in model is one that we also, you may not see as much, but it's where our support and enrichment program director pushes, and learning support teachers might push in to support teachers in designing and working on implementing, designing their curriculum and implementing accommodations that seem to be in line with different students and how they learn in the classroom. And so those might be things where we're maybe adjusting projects and changing assignments and making sure that there's opportunities for kids to demonstrate their understanding in ways that align well with their learning style. And that's where you might not necessarily see that work in action, but it's something that happens on a regular basis. And then certainly all learning plans that get developed in the lower school or in fifth grade continue into the middle school, and we work with teachers to make sure that those are implemented. Let's see, Fatima question: what school system do most eighth graders typically go to? Ann Arbor Public or other private schools? Again, great question. So typically around 85% of our kids after they graduate from eighth grade go on to one of the local large public high schools. I have found that one of the great joys that I have is I partner with all of our eighth grade families and help guide them through that process of thinking about what high school is going to make sense for their child. Again, I'm not making a recommendation on that. I simply would want to help and give you, ask questions and be a resource for you as you're thinking about the options, because really everything is wide open as far as schools of choice and different opportunities there. So those, we have historically seen around 85% go off to a large local public high school. The two biggest feeders that we have where students go are Pioneer and Skyline, followed by it has altered sometimes between Y High, the Washtenaw International High School in Ypsilanti, or Community High School. where we see many students go to. So those tend to be the biggest feeders that we have. And then, the rest will matriculate to, we've seen more interest in the Washtenaw Technical Middle College, which is a school that's coordinated with Washtenaw Community College. We've seen a lot more interest in that program. We've seen, we certainly have a handful of students that go to Green Hills for high school. And then we will occasionally have students that will go to maybe a Cranbrook or one of the other local high schools, Saline, Chelsea, depending upon their district. Good question, though. So I'll bring you back to the initial question I asked, as you think about and you remember and reflect on your middle school experience. And this can be a whole new one. It can be different. It can be magical. We believe that these 3 years are magical. That the 3 years are and in the middle school, it's a place where it's cool to be smart. Kids can celebrate that. They can celebrate each other. They can celebrate learning. They can be the top dogs on campus. One of the last opportunities that they would have to be those top dogs on campus. And they can do so in a joyful learning environment where they've got remarkable teachers, teachers that know them, that care about them, that are looking out for them on a daily basis. And again, we are very eager to have your fifth graders experience life in the middle school at some point here in the very near future. Obviously, we will do so safely, but we would love to give them that experience in the middle school. So that's a lot to throw at you, I know. I certainly know. I'm wondering if you've got other questions. I would happily answer it. I'm gonna stop sharing right now, but I would love to answer any of your questions. I would also love to give Michelle an opportunity to share a little bit about her parent experience of having a middle schooler at Emerson and one go through Emerson and then end up moving on to Green Hills after that. So Michelle, maybe I'd hand it over to you.
Sure, that's fine. Thanks, Andy. So this is the second time that I've been through this intro to middle school presentation. The first time was when my son Chase was moving up to middle school. And although we picked Emerson because it was a K-8, and we're pretty certain we were going to stay at Emerson, I wanted to make sure that, I understood what we were moving into. So it was kind of interesting because I got to see it from the perspective of not having been through it before. And now tonight, and with Christian, between COVID and we knew, we had a good middle school experience, we decided that we were going to send him to Emerson. And I don't think I sat through this presentation last year. So this year, watching this, and as Andy mentioned, for those of you who might have joined a little bit late, I'm the parent, my husband and I are parents of a current sixth grader. So we are living in the middle school right now, or he's living in the middle school, and a ninth grader who's been through the middle school and now is at Green Hills. So, so I feel like watching this presentation now, I wanted to say, everything that Andy has said about the middle school experience and, all those highlights at the beginning are so true. And I can say that from the perspective of having been through it. So many benefits, I think, to staying at Emerson. I love the K-8 model. I liked it when we came. We brought our, Chase when he was in kindergarten to Emerson so that he could have that K-8 experience. And it turned out to be everything we had wanted it to be. So I think everything Andy had said about having the kids in the environment where they're the top dogs has so many benefits. They have that leadership opportunity with the younger kids there. And even though things are a little bit different with COVID and they may not have as many opportunities at this very moment as they did a few years back, knowing that they're, sitting at the top of the pack, that they're setting examples for the little kids, and they're told that, as they go throughout middle school, I think it really makes them behave very differently. They want to be good examples. They want to be the big kids. I also love the fact that the issues they're dealing with are very much middle school issues. It's puberty, it's, issues maybe with gaming and things like that, but it's not those high school issues. And having a son now in ninth grade and the things that they're talking about, more issues with maybe social media and things that are bigger kid issues, are, that's part of that environment because the middle schoolers are there, but the high schoolers are there too. And I love the fact that we don't have to deal with any of that in middle school. Puberty's hard enough. And I love that they're in this protected environment where they have advocates for them. I know when our oldest son was in 6th grade, kind of hit puberty before everybody else, got kind of moody and withdrawn, and we were a bit worried about him. He seemed not to be as characteristically kind of carefree and having as much fun as he did when he was was younger. He seemed a little more tentative, and so we were concerned about the fact that he was going through some moodiness with puberty, and talked to his advisor and talked to the 6th grade team of teachers, and we were so impressed at how much they really cared. They said, we're going to keep an eye on him. We want to make him feel included. We want him to feel part of this new environment, this middle school environment. And I mean, he came around, and I think it was just, hormones and the things that a lot of my friends' kids went through a little bit later, later in 6th grade or in 7th grade or even 8th grade. But that really gave us the confidence that just like the lower school, and I've always, many of you have heard me say before, I love how the homeroom teachers and all the specialist teachers really, really care about my kids. I felt that really carried through to middle school as well. That year, that 6th grade year, which was, a transition for Chase, I felt that they really helped him with that. And by the time he was, by the time he was halfway through 6th grade, he was feeling very confident, very comfortable. And then by the time he was in 8th grade, I mean, he was just, on top of the world. He was having a great time, loving the school, disappointed that some things were disrupted because of COVID. But I'll tell you, I sat at graduation, and I would have had tears in my eyes anyway, because I'm a very emotional person. But listening to all the kids' graduation speeches was confirmation to me that we made the right choice. I mean, we knew that all along through middle school, that we made a really good choice academically. We were very pleased with Emerson. Certainly socially, there are lots of opportunities for the kids to give presentations in this environment, and it's very much encouraged. Likewise for, writing, as Andy was mentioning, so many opportunities to really work on their writing skills. So, Chase had a really good 3 years of middle school at Emerson, but listening to those graduation speeches, these kids, and I love the fact that I know in the past, Andy, you can jump in if I'm wrong, but, they don't cut kids. If they want to give a graduation speech, they can do it. That's true, right? And that is an invaluable experience. And, if your child doesn't want to do it, that's fine too. But so many kids who probably wouldn't have in a different environment felt really comfortable and really confident. And to hear these kids get up and speak, I thought, oh my gosh, graduation speeches weren't even this good when I was in college. These kids were really, it came from the heart, and they felt like they were in a good, comfortable, safe environment. So that to me was, it was a big, so it was really gave us the confidence that, we made the right decision, and certainly sending Christian through the middle school equally as well. But I must say, Chase started, he's been in 9th grade at Green Hills now for a month, and he has mentioned a number of times, unprompted, wow, Emerson really prepared me well. I feel like I'm one of the most prepared kids in our 9th grade class. So in fact, he's mentioned on a number of occasions, it's even kind of easy here. Now, we're only a month into it, so we'll see. But he said, I feel like I've got these great writing skills. There's so many things that I feel like Emerson really prepared me for. So again, that was, made us feel really comfortable with the decision, in the rearview mirror that we sent him, but that Christian is there as well, is at Emerson as well. And getting that same experience. And I'll be honest, driving across town is probably not my favorite thing to do, but we're not, we want our kids to have that good foundation, and we feel like Emerson really provided. So I am willing to drive back and forth across town to, for the next 3 years while Christian continues his education at Emerson Middle School. So I am not being paid for this, by the way. I just wanted you to know that we had a really good experience, and I wanted you to hear it from somebody who, who's been through it and can, who can say that I would do it all over again if I had a third child. So, and I'm not going to have a third child, but anyway, I'm happy to answer anybody's questions. But yeah, I think Emerson has a great and a very competitive middle school, and I would highly recommend it.
Thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Great to see Chase in the car line as you dropped Christian off and then head off to drop him off.
Well, yeah, he loves that we get to drop Christian off first because he is such a, he loves Emerson. And I don't know if I'll tell you this story real quickly too, but I know everybody's probably ready to cut loose. But the 8th grade party was after graduation, and that evening we were cleaning up and the kids were there. I must say the kids really bond in middle school. And I think it's because, they don't have a homeroom teacher anymore. They have advisors, but they really, I see this year after year, the 8th grade classes when they're leaving are very close, but everyone had left, and we were cleaning up, and it was like 11 o'clock at night of graduation night. And as we were pulling out of the parking lot, he said, "Mom," he said, "can you go around the parking lot one more time?" Because he said it. And then we kind of went down memory lane. He said, "Remember in kindergarten, I used to stand in that little box. Remember when we stood on the letters? Remember when I moved up to middle school?" But he was, it was so heartfelt because he has such a special place in his heart for Emerson. So, and that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Well, I'd love to give us maybe, I'm happy to stay till around 8:30 if there's questions. Would love to answer them for you. So, but I also know it's a school night, and if you do need to cut out, I totally understand. But and I also just say thank you for coming, but happy to stay on and answer any questions. Go ahead. I'm not, Sasha, I see your hand up. Thanks for it. Just jump on in and ask questions.
So first of all, thank you so much for everybody's time. This has been fantastically informative. And at the same time, I do have many, many, many questions. So I really hope that this will be just a start of a wonderful conversation in sorting through the questions that are actually not just my private ones, but rather pertain to the whole. The first one is, how are kids structured into these advisories? So it was kind of unclear to me, how will they get assigned a specific advisor? Is it kind of the same proceeding as when we structure them into homerooms?
Yep, it's very similar. So I will work with our 5th grade teachers to really think through thoughtfully the advisories. We also take into consideration what we would intend to be maybe possible interests and connections between the actual teacher and the kids. So if there seems to be kids that are, really interested in something that might be something that could connect with that teacher, we might, put them in that advisory with that teacher. So, but it is very much like homeroom placements. We certainly take the group into consideration, the other kids that are in there, the makeup of the group as well. So that definitely is another question or another factor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll jump in for a question. Obviously, over our time at Emerson, there's been a decreased enrollment in the middle school. And I was just curious how that has affected what you guys are able to offer and how that experience feels for these kids. Because, I love that Michelle's son had an amazing experience. It has decreased over the past, this enrollment had decreased. And we had to let go of some of our middle school staff and stuff to adapt to the size. And I was just curious how that has affected the experience for these kids.
I mean, I will only speak that I think it's, we've just continued to get better, honestly. I think that there's been some changes that we've made and looked at, not necessarily maybe the reasons for why kids left, because, that's kind of sometimes a difficult investigation to do. Obviously, there are sometimes siblings that come into play and different questions that come up in that respect. But, I think that we've added to our opportunities. We've been able to extend math opportunities, I think, to a broader range of kids. For example, we've added Quest into the science program in the middle school, which I think many of these things would have happened regardless of whether or not we got bigger or smaller. But again, they were opportunities that we've added. I think the performance and presentation block classes are things that we've added and shifted to provide more opportunities for kids. Yeah, I don't think it's changed at all. If anything, we've just continued to grow and innovate and get better.
If no one else wants to jump in, oh, somebody else.
I think Cheryl had a question.
I just had a quick question about, I saw the statistics at the beginning where you're talking about how people felt they were very well prepared after going to Emerson in various subjects, and all the numbers are super high, and I think that's wonderful, but it's, I mean, remarkable that science is at least 10% lower of a score than any of the other subjects. And I just want to know if there was some way that we were going to try to address that, given just the sheer importance of science and STEM and all of these subjects as a core subject for these kids going forward in such a, you know, a high-tech, fast-paced, science-based world.
Yeah, and that was a number that we keyed into as well. And it began with really encouraging and asking our science teachers to do an investigation into the ways in which our science program aligns with many of the science programs that exist in high school, to just continue to see how that process looks from 6th through 9th, really, or even beyond, just to see where that falls in line. So we are continuing to do that. We've adjusted when the different content areas happen, so that, as I mentioned before, so that it does, the progression seems a little bit to be more in line with what they could tend to experience when they go off into high school. And then certainly diving into asking those hard questions about what do our science classes look like, and how can we continue to develop those robust experiences from 6th grade through, I mean, even before that, but how do we look at the science across all the grade levels and make sure that it is strong? Those are still questions that we're asking. And those are still things that we want to continue to dig into. I feel like we've made progress, but again, those are going to be still questions that we are going to ask. Is there a maximum number of kids that you will enroll? Sorry, question from the chat. Is there a maximum number of kids that you will enroll in any given middle school grade? Historically, that number has been 60, meaning that we've had 3 sections of 20. We've never actually, I think the highest we've been is around 57. We break those grade levels up into sections depending upon the numbers of kids that we have. So if we were to go above, if we were at 2 sections, it would be 40. If we were at 3 sections, it would be 60. It ultimately just depends on that number, that enrollment number, and then we would work to figure out what the number of sections would be from there. I don't think we'll be trying to go to 80, but maybe.
Michelle, I actually have a question for you. Your son being a new 9th grader at Green Hills, after there's obviously, a core group there who is there from 6th grade to 8th grade. Obviously, we're not that far into it. And last year was a ridiculous year for all of the kids. So I'm sure some of the 6th grade survivor aspect of Green Hills might be feeling a little different, but I love that he is academically prepared. But how is it? How many new kids are there? New, non-Green Hills 6th grade, all the way up kids, and how emotionally is that working?
Socially, it's been really easy. Some of that is, he joined the soccer team. A number of other kids have joined activities that start well ahead of the beginning of school. So he felt like soccer practice actually started that Monday after graduation, which was on Friday. So he felt like he had been there forever already. And so that helped with the transition. But he doesn't feel like a new kid on the block, which, he has a different kind of confidence, I think, coming out of Emerson. There are a number of kids that were there. Some he's catching up with who were there, who went there for middle school, and then a number of kids who went there for high school. But it's been a really easy transition socially. And what's also interesting about COVID is the 10th graders really didn't get that experience last year either. So they're going through kind of a new year as well. So when Chase sometimes will ask some of the 10th graders, well, this coming weekend is homecoming. And he was asking one of his friends on the soccer team, well, how does homecoming work around here? And he said, well, I don't know, because this is my first year through it, So there's somewhat of a benefit. But, I asked him that too. I said, do you notice a big difference between the kids who maybe went to middle school there and those who are coming in as ninth graders? He, looks back very fondly and says, I think, we're a real tight group. He was glad to have stayed at Emerson and he'd do it all over again. So.
Thanks.
Would it be possible to jump back a little bit to electives? And my question is actually, who puts these electives together? And how do we know what kind of electives we are going to get next year? And do we know them ahead of time? Do they depend on availability of teachers, interest group of students, and so on? So how do we know what kind of electives we are getting? Because it seems like we are taking one per trimester. So that would take us to 3 electives per year, which range from science, tech, and social sciences, as you mentioned. So if you could just give me a little bit more information on that, that would be great.
Yeah, so typically, teachers are the ones that are developing those classes, and at the same time, in the past, we've had a number of electives that have transpired because there's been students who have come forward and said, I would really love to do X, Y, and Z. We had for example, we had an a cappella a group of kids that really wanted to do an a cappella group, and so we asked around the teachers and said, hey, is there anybody that could do an a cappella group? And Eddie was like, sure, and so he put together a description, and any kid that was interested in signing up came and signed up. I would say that there are some more traditional electives that kids and families could count on as they think about the electives. Like I was saying, there will almost always be a sciencey type permaculture elective. There will almost always be an art-based elective. There will often always be a social science-based elective. And so again, there can be some consistent themes that exist. And I'd be happy to share with you the past 3 trimesters worth of electives, just so you could see how they flow from one trimester to the next, and what types
Fantastic.
of offerings have been there in the past. And you could see, but again, they do get, teachers put a lot of thought and work and effort into them, and really try to get creative and innovative with those classes. But then also listen to the kids and try to think through ways that they could create classes that would be inspiring for them.
Great, thank you.
So Andy, one of the things that Emerson's always done really well is to have differentiated learning for different types of kids and different types of learners. And like, for instance, I don't know, if we just take like math, right? I see that there's different tracks of math, but let's say, whatever, we're all in algebra 2. Within algebra 2, is there still some differentiation based upon what, where different kids are at? Or is it just like, this is where we're at, we're chugging through the book, figure it out, let's go, we're doing this thing?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a little different in math than you might find in like the language arts, social studies, and science classes. I mean, math certainly has a little bit more of a linear progression to it, but even within that, there's a zone of proximal development that we can work within to help kids at learning at the pace and within the ways that work for them. But certainly within the language arts, social studies, science, world languages, there are opportunities again in all of those classes. There's a wide range of ways in which we can work with kids and differentiate those programs. And again, sometimes those are things that the kids don't even know are happening. And that's really our ultimate goal. You know, we want them to walk in and for them to feel confident that whatever is going to be put in front of them, they are going to be successful. And we don't want to put something in front of them that's not going to align with necessarily what's going to work best for them. And so we want to try to do that ahead of time as much as possible through that push-in model that I was talking about with support, that kids can get those learning opportunities sort of already designed for them prior to it being, well, here's what everybody's going to do, but actually here's what you're going to do. Like, we don't want that to happen. And so, you know, there's a very wide range of opportunities for kids. And certainly we work with kids to learn about how they learn best and figure out what's going to be best for them. And you know, it's a learning process. We certainly will take all the recommendations from past years about what has worked best. But also kids change and they grow and they learn and they develop and you know, they can you know, certainly they surprise us and they challenge us, and we work together to figure that out. And we work with parents to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what that program would look like for their child. So those things are happening across the board for kids. And again, there are we talk about it all the time that kids don't know what's being done for other kids within their classes. They just get what's right for them.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is 8:30. Happy to take a couple more questions. But I'd also say that, like, even though I'm saying it's 8:30, I'm again happy to take a few questions and also happy to continue the conversation, you know, at a later date or individually with any of you. I'm always happy to meet to talk about those things. So, but again, happy to take a few more questions if there's still someone lingering out there.
I just wanted to say thank you to take the time to do this for the 5th grade specifically and everything like that. I know, you know, we talked that there are a lot of questions, so I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm so appreciative that everybody came out again on a Wednesday night to talk about these next steps. And like I said, if it's helpful to have further conversation, or if anybody wants to set up a one-on-one time to meet, or like I said, it may be helpful too after your kid has an opportunity to experience sort of a day in the life of a middle schooler, that we could have a time to circle back around and see how they felt and check in, because that can sometimes be just a really, really great experience for them. I mean, I shouldn't say sometimes, it is a great experience for them. And sometimes can be the thing that they come back and be like, I'm going to middle school there, you know, which is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would actually suggest the meeting that you were talking about with your 8th grade families about where they should go. I think you have that opportunity to do that for your 5th grade families who want to take you up on that and have a individualized meeting, you know, that's going to be a little bit more impactful. And I think that would, if you are able to do that, I think that would go a long way for a lot of people to understand how their kids specifically would fit into this mold.
Yep. Well, I'll certainly include that in my message as a follow-up to tonight, with the recording and anything else that I can share. I'll probably throw in there the elective descriptions, because that sounds like something that people would be interested in reading through. Happy to include any other information, and then also happy to extend the invitation. You'll get it here personally, but then I'll also include it in an email so that you all know that I'd love to sit down and talk with you about, again, the next steps for your kids.
And I'd like to offer too, if any parents want to talk to me offline, I'm happy to chat further. You know, I have opinions about lots of different things, so never short on opinions.
And thank you again, Michelle, for being here. I really appreciate it. That
You're
is really
welcome.
great to have you here. All right. Well, again, like I said, thank you all for coming. I'll follow up with an email and invitation to meet if you have further questions. Thank you for being here, and I wish you a wonderful night.
Thanks.